Hey everybody, welcome back, or I should say welcome back to me. Oh yes, I picked the perfect times to have a few days off, don't I? It's absolutely everywhere, so I had to tune out to it, and then I binged watched it all last night. Yes, I did 8 episodes of With Love Meghan back to back, and this video is going to be all about my thoughts on it episode by episode. But there was no reimagining of the lifestyle programming. There were no personal insights into the real Meghan. Yes, there were plenty of anecdotes throughout, as expected, most of which were little stories of her childhood, which clash with the truth and her own version of her childhood that she previously told on the tick. So of course, this is Meghan not so much as reimagining what it is to be a hostess so she could tell the world how they can put a bit of magic into everyday things. This is Meghan using this as well to rewrite her childhood. Again, we've got a lot of the orphan Annie storyline that comes back into it. Thomas Markle has been completely written out, and Meghan does make a few references at times to the trials and the struggles that she went through. She's got friends that have been there for her through the hardest times in her life, and you know exactly what she's talking about. Those mere 18 months when she was a working royal that she is still milking. So, in a nutshell, let's begin, shall we? Episode 1 started off with Meghan showing us her beehives, and she told the viewers that she had been beekeeping for over a year. But she then asks the beekeeper what is the lifespan of a bee, and also says, I can't do this, it's so scary, as he's smoking the bees. Now you think if you've been beekeeping for a year, you're an actual beekeeper yourself. Oh my God, you've just got to do these things, haven't you? That's just so scary. You've got to push yourselves. We know that she's not doing beekeeping whatsoever. If she has got bees, she has got her bees managed, certainly by someone else, the same as her gardens. But you've got to remember, this wasn't Meghan's house and this wasn't Meghan's gardens. So it's very hard straight away to try and get a feel of the genuine, authentic Meghan at home. Now, the first exciting segment we have in episode 1 of How to Be the Hostess with the Mostess, Meghan tells the viewer how you prep a guest room, and it involves creating gifts to let the people know that are staying with you that you thought of them. Myself personally, clean bed sheets and a clean towel, that lets them know that I actually remembered that they were coming. But no, with Meghan, they get a whole board of gifts and things to show that she's thinking of them. She makes her own bath salts from scratch, mixing in a bit of pink salt with some Epsom salts, and then of course some dried flowers. These will feature heavily throughout this entire series. After she was done with the bath salts, we then got onto bath tea bags, Meghan's version of the bath bomb, as she added dried fruits into a silk bag and then tied it with a bow and then added a label, so obviously her guest knows exactly what's in the bag that they put in the bath. Heaven forbid otherwise. Meghan makes a point of putting all of the dried herbs and leaves into the bags because you don't want to be cleaning out your bathtub after the guest has left. And it's like, I think we all know, Meghan, you're not cleaning out your bathtubs. In a rather odd move, she's picked someone who's not particularly famous, who is known for being Meghan's friend on Netflix. I knew him as the crying makeup artist, Daniel Martin, and he shows as much passion and his love for his 15-year friendship as he did on Netflix with the Harry and Meghan, the royal family were mean to us storyline, as to what he does with Meghan, cooking for him and taking care of him. Meghan says of Daniel, he was here for me in the before, the during and the after. Obviously, again, another reference to the difficult time that she suffered at the hands of the royal family. So on this magical tray of goodies for the guest room, Meghan microwaves some popcorn. She then takes some, peanut butter pretzel snacks out of one bag and puts them in another bag, but she ties the next bag with a bow and then she writes on it, peanut butter pretzels, just in case, she points out, that her guest might be allergic, given the fact that this is her friend that was here for the before, the during and after, and she's been friends with him for 15 years. You think that she would know if he was allergic to nuts. Other things that came out once Daniel had arrived was Meghan didn't know that he was a lefty when he cut himself. She sounded very surprised. He'd asked if she'd always cooked like this. Again, finding it strange for someone that's been friends for 15 years. Meghan didn't know that he had a tiny apartment in New York. And then there was a couple of other references that had me thinking, these two don't actually spend a lot of time together, do they? Now, one thing that was shocking, Meghan decides to create her friends a pasta masterpiece, but upsetting Italians, she doesn't call pasta or spaghetti pasta. No, she calls them noodles. And she gets into the kitchen and she's chopping tomatoes and veggies in a white billowing shirt, a shirt that would be suited on something like pole dark. You know, a gust of wind and her pantaloon sleeves would take her off across into the Montecito sunset. I'm honestly surprised as she leant over the stove that we didn't have a Mrs. Doubtfire moment. More excitingly for Daniel, after they created this a noodle masterpiece together, Meghan then tells Daniel that they're going to make candles using beeswax, and she tells the viewer that you can get hold of beeswax from your beekeeper if you have one, or you can just simply go to your local beekeeper. Yes, that's how easy it is to make some candles, or just go to the shop and buy yourself a Yankee candle. But this was all about the fun of those two bonding together, as she tells Daniel he can pick essences out of the ones she's laid out for him to put into his candle, and then tells him exactly what essences to put into his candle. Throughout the entire interaction, whether they were creating pasta or candles or even a cake, all you can hear is, oh, it's amazing. Oh my God. Oh my gosh. Oh, that's so amazing. Obviously, all in Meghan's direction as she laps it up. Meghan likes to be told that she's amazing a lot, and Daniel is more than happy to tell her how fabulous that she is, and everything that she does is just truly amazing. Meghan does in fact have a relatable moment, despite being in a multi-million-pound mansion that's rented, in a kitchen that's, well, honestly, I think even some pots and pan sets are worth probably my house. And she has a moment where she explains, wearing near enough, £500,000 worth of jewellery on one wrist, you can use a Ziploc bag to ice your cakes, people. This is Meghan's relatable moment. Yes, you can put all of the icing into a Ziploc bag, cut off the corner, and you can squeeze it out. Riveting stuff. And it doesn't get much better than that, does it? Oh, I've got so much in store for you because this was just episode 1. Episode 2, the one with Mindy. Oh, we start off the episode with a quick montage of Meghan smiling and grinning and doing something. The music changes throughout this show already were making me feel nauseous. It's all these different soundtracks, some of it elevator music, and then it mingles with actual hits from the 60s, and it's just continuous. You know, like the modern Disney films where someone bursts into song every so many seconds. It's like that with no particular pattern. But this starts off with Meghan saying hostessing is not just about one person. No, we're aware of that, Meghan. It's about making your guests feel fabulous. And you know what she does to show how nice she is to other people? She makes one single member of crew, a coffee. Not only does he get a coffee, Meghan decides to make him a mandwich. A mandwich, that's the feminist Meghan forgetting her place again, as she makes him a bacon and egg sandwich with the yolk going everywhere. And Meghan says, while dancing to the beat of her own drummer in her head, my bacon brings all the boys to the yards. Oh dear, I can hear Khalees screaming from miles away. So Mindy arrives, and it's clear that this episode is going to centre around children's birthdays and the things that you can do to make everything so much more fun. But then she does create some adult things for Mindy to eat. They do some juice squeezing, which is then used to make, I think it was a Bellini, some sort of cocktail. Alcohol features heavily throughout every single episode. She then sprinkled dead flowers, and this is a running theme, onto a frittata for Mindy to eat, because nothing says elevating a frittata than dead flowers all over it. Inside every episode, there is another mini episode of Meghan doing something boring. It could be absolutely anything. This particular episode, it was her making a balloon arch. She then tells the story of how she once blew up balloons for Archie's birthday and it hurt her face, and now she's discovered, wait for it folks, a balloon pump. Did you know you can buy these? She even tells you the price and they blow up the balloons for you. And she says it with so much delight, like, what is this sorcery? I cannot contain my excitement. So many of you will be aware that Meghan was a little bit rude to Mindy on a couple of occasions, if I'm honest. One of them was where Mindy was talking about Meghan eating Jack in the Box and says,
I don't think anyone in the world knows that Meghan Markle has eaten Jack in the Box and loves it.
It's so funny too that you keep saying Meghan Markle. You know I'm Sussex now.
and Mindy, you could see she was taken aback, and she quickly switches it round to do with, it was some waffle to do with the children. It's so important to have the same name as your children. I didn't realise how important it was to have the same surname as your children. It's like, why are you pushing Sussex now? Archie's 5 years old. Is nobody else finding this rather strange that now she's saying to people to call her Meghan Sussex? Considering on Oprah, one of her complaints that her identity was taken from her. If you remember, she lost her name. She lost who she was because she became the Duchess of Sussex. She was no longer Meghan Markle. And here we've got, I'm no longer Meghan Markle, I'm Meghan Sussex. But Mindy now knows. And it wasn't the only time she was a bit spicy with Mindy. I wouldn't say she was being racist, but she was definitely category B. That was mean girl style, like, you say stuff so funny, Mindy, as she laughs for the cameras. If I was Mindy, I wouldn't be friends with her anymore after doing that twice to her on camera. Now, after insulting Mindy, Meghan then gets another little segment of her. This is her now creating fun kiddie party bags. And Meghan stuffs them with a little bit of hamster bedding. And then she gets some miniature gardening tools, saying that Archie and Lily love gardening. You know, because lots of parents get very upset with their children being sent home from parties, you know, with stuff that's fun, you know, sweets and stuff. They even can ring up and be a bit annoyed about it. So Meghan makes sure she takes all of the fun out of the party bags. Miniature gardening tools. Now, I've got nieces and nephews. I am telling you, someone would have got hurt with that, especially in the car ride on the way home. Meghan then puts in little brown bags filled with seeds. Some kids get sweet peas, some get basil seeds. They want something that they can grow and to watch grow. It's very exciting for them. And then she puts in a little compost pot for them. And then she includes a little handwritten note, as it were, or something to go in there so the kids know what they're planting. She does include some sweets though. She really does rock the boat when she includes Manuka honey sticks. The price tag on these are not for the faint-hearted, and nor is the aftertaste. There's something that I would say are not made for really for kids. It's more of an adult thing you put in your tea. Could just be me. But needless to say, I couldn't think of anything for kids more boring. Even when she does tie on a little bee, it's not a toy, it's not something they can keep, it's just something to make the bags look pretty. Those bags that are no doubt going to be left outside immediately after giving it to the kids when they're like, what the heck is this? Meghan is completely condescending, whether she's talking to the viewer or she's talking to her guests. She was like it with Daniel, she's been like it with Mindy. They make crostinis and it's all to do with explaining to Mindy. But in England, they call them ladybirds, but we call them ladybugs. And Mindy's like, oh yeah, that always confuses me. Yeah, because it is strange, isn't it? Because they're not birds, they are bugs. And I'm thinking, this is a great friendship, isn't it? You can just tell the conversation's just warmly flowing. There's not enough mimosas to make that conversation ever interesting. So we have a quick recap about how Meghan created a massive fruit rainbow. I mean, that's amazing if you want to remortgage your house for some fruit these days. And then the frittata with the dead flowers and a crudité board. Now, I forgot to mention this, a crudité board features in every single episode because, you know, this is something new that Meghan's trying to push out into the world. I never knew that you could chop up vegetables and even fruit, right? Crazy stuff. Put it on a board and stick some dip there and you serve it to people. This is madness, absolute madness. Episode 3, the one with the Korean chef. Oh, this one starts off with Meghan squealing in delight. Stop it, how sweet is that, she says as she turns a tray of freshly baked donuts, sprinkled with, yes, you've guessed it, some dead flowers, to the camera crews. Oh, look how magical it makes everything, Meghan. Dead flowers for everybody. It just really does put the magic into the most ordinary things. Roy Choy, the Korean chef, is apparently a big fan of donuts, so Meghan wanted to make him some donuts, so he knew when he arrived that she was thinking of him. I mean, how wonderful is that? I can feel myself going gooier and gooier with every episode. Now, Roy definitely played into the theme of what I think this show was actually about, and that was praising and adoring Meghan, elevating Meghan Markle. I'm not going to start calling her Meghan Sussex, that's for sure. But Meghan comes across as so boring. He even tries to make conversation with her, and there was a lot of strained silences. It was very awkward, very clear that these two people do not know each other and certainly don't have a connection, even though they tried to make connections happen. Shared love of music. Meghan's face tells me there wasn't very much of a shared love of music. But he just says to her something simple about, how long have you been gardening? I swear, 3 minutes later, she is still waffling on to the point. He says, oh, a long time then. Shutting it down. Thank you, Roy. Thank you. This episode was a weird one for me because he was really likable. If he got his own cooking channel, I would watch it. The recipes looked amazing, although you didn't really get the recipes. Everything had been neatly already laid out into perfectly clean glass dishes. So Meghan was basically just pouring stuff in. But the end result looked amazing. So I think Netflix would be better off giving him maybe a cooking channel than what they did this complete and utter disaster. But moving on, that's about all I can say about that episode. Let's go on to episode 4. Ah, yes, the sun tea. Meghan explains that when she was a child, she would excitedly get a big jar and she would put tea bags in it and she'd place it outside. So when the sun would rise, the tea would then ferment and then you'd have it a couple of hours later. Even the Netflix crew said, you did that as a child? They can obviously detect a certain air of, what's that aroma? Bullshit? Yes, I would say it's bullshit as well. Meghan naturally shows the viewer how to do it as she picks an array of herbs and fruits that have been dried and she puts them in a nice little silk bag and places it outside on the table before the sun rises and then makes the tea become drinkable. But the fact that Meghan is saying she did this as a child, she's forgetting that in an episode, I think it was before, she was talking about her very hard up childhood. Yes, the orphan Annie routine comes into it. She talks about how she was on TV dinners. She was a latchkey kid. She's suddenly forgotten the stories of her father, which she used to write about on the TIG, about how he'd send a limo to pick her up from one of her expensive, exclusive LA schools that would take her to the film set, and she would eat on set with all of the crew and then all of the actors. And then sometimes her dad used to take her to these really posh restaurants in between tap and ballet classes. That's all forgotten. This is Meghan's orphan Annie moment yet again. So who's the guest on this fantastic episode? We have Delfina, the Argentinian wife of Harry's BFF, Nacho Vegaras. And she comes on and Meghan's like, you're so tall, which caused Delfina to say, yes, I am. I mean, that's kind of weird. This is your friend. She obviously knows that she's tall. It was like, why are you making a thing out of that? Is that just a conversation point? Oh, look, everybody, look how tall she is. Isn't that fabulous? Just really odd. But this is Meghan. Her interaction, even with her friends, just seems a bit disconnected. So what surprises did she make for Delfina? Well, she made her some lovely dog biscuits. Meghan puts on an apron, for hygiene purposes, as she wears all of her rings and has her hair dangling in all of the food throughout, again, the entire series. It's honestly bizarre, but it's a tick box. Has she got her hair dangling down, whether it be tendrils or whether it just be a lot of hair, loosely hanging down, a beige or white pristine outfit. And then don't forget the many rings on her fingers and bells on her toes. Nothing says hygiene like the bacteria on rings as she's mushing it into focaccia bread. Now the focaccia, I've mentioned it before because we saw that in the trailer, and it brought up something else. Meghan in the beginning, as I said, one of these little segments where we see Meghan prepping for the arrival of her guest, she then says, I've just learnt how to make focaccia. But later, when Delfina comes on camera, she says, oh, good, you're finally going to teach me this recipe. I've been asking you, forever. And it's like, well, that doesn't marry up with each other, does it? She's either just learnt it or you've been asking her for ages like it's her grandmother's secret recipe. There's lots of stuff throughout this entire series where it just doesn't sync up together. But one thing that does sync up is Delfina praises Meghan. What is she praising her on? She explains that she was blown away with Meghan's fluent Argentinian when she met her. This then involved Meghan having one sentence, and then later on there's lots of sí, yes, later, my friend. And yeah, it's just another way that Meghan could have had herself elevated. They did this on polo, and when the polo player started speaking to her, Meghan just went, sí. And I'm thinking, yeah. Meghan said she speaks a lot of fluent languages, and the only thing that I know that she's definitely fluent in is bullshit. The two women go hiking where Meghan is spotted wearing a hat that is very reminiscent of the hats that they wore in The Handmaid's Tale. You know, another completely fictional show. She then runs a cute story past Delfina as they're hiking about how she was a Girl Scout and her mother, Doria, was a Scout leader, because we are completely reinventing Meghan's entire childhood here. Thomas Markle, who was that? It was Doria who raised her and paid for Meghan to go to all of those exclusive schools that got her a break into acting, all of the tap and the dance, that did the lighting at all of her school shows. I'm sure Thomas Markle was probably even more heartbroken at Meghan just completely rewriting her childhood. But hey, this is about Meghan, and with Love Meghan, because with Meghan, as she keeps saying, love is in the details. She just seems to forget the details that she's already told herself many times on her TIG blog, funnily enough. Continuing with angering Italians all around the world, Meghan makes a pasta dish again, and she uses a giant pasta. I think it's called the tortiglione. Meghan calls it again noodles. I don't know why this irks me so much. I'm not Italian, but it really, really irritates me where she keeps calling pasta noodles. Maybe just on episode 4, I was just getting a little bit cranky, but whatever. Meghan, at this point, however, this gets better, right? Meghan has saved some water from cooking the pasta, which Delfina praises her for. She literally goes, Meghan, you're so clever. You're so clever that you thought to do that, saving some pasta water so the sauce wasn't dry. I'm just thinking to myself, episode 4, I've got 4 more to go. You can do this. Come on, girl. You can do this. It's pretty obvious, even at episode 4, that the main ingredient throughout this is not obviously the cruditables and the dead flowers. It is praise for Meghan. This is an absolute narcissistic vanity dream for her. Every single guest that she has on, she looks at them every time she so much as hands them a label or a pen or a piece of food, and she waits patiently for them to go, oh my God, that's just like, oh my God, that's the best thing ever. And at this point, I'm like, oh my God, how am I going to get through this? And you will have to find out by joining me for part 2, coming to you tomorrow.